Okay, so to really understand gamification, Professor Karp thinks that it's nice to first start by defining what a game is. So he defines a game as a game is a system in which players engage in an abstract challenge, defined by rules, interactivity, and feedback that results in a quantifiable, often eliciting an emotional reaction. So key words that we can pick from this definition of games is that a game is a system. This is very important, the first part, the system. All parts of the game should be connected. All parts of the game should be connected. In the first example, I gave you a task and I explained the rules. And you became one system. If when she raised up her hand, no one else could raise up their hand because the system is acting in one way, this way, right? So you become, the game becomes a system which players engage in an abstract challenge, right? So in the example of Runner 5 or Zombie Run, you are building a base and then you put on your headphones, then they tell you have to run to collect some supplies. When you turn a corner, they tell you run faster. There are zombies right behind you. You know, it's kind of a challenge, right? And then they are made by rules. Right? You cannot just be on, like in Pokemon Go, you cannot, they tell you, they ask you, are you walking or you are a passenger? You know, because they don't want you to break the rules. In this case, they're just discouraging people to drive and play. But the rule is you should not play while driving. So there are rules, certain rules, different rules within the game. And then also the outcome you know. Let's get into details about this definition. We look at each of these words in a little bit more detail. So first, let's look at the system. Is a set of interconnected elements that occur in a space inside the game. Scores are linked to actions, and actions are limited by rules. For example, if the whole point of the game is to get the highest score, there should be actions governed by rules within getting a high score. Otherwise, they can just create a big button here and just say press and get 1 million points. But it's not fun, it's not interesting, right? So there should be rules that govern the point system within the game. And then also, players involve a person either interacting with the game or interacting with other players within the game. Later, I will refer to players as an audience, because us as public health people or epidemiologists or physicians, we like to think about audiences. Who is our target audience? So I'll refer to players as audiences. And then players in gamification are our target audience. Next, they mention an abstract. Games typically involves an abstraction of reality and typically take place in a narrowly defined game space, right? So there's reality and there's game space, but the reality somehow you can imagine in the game space. You can imagine everything in reality within a small area in a smartphone game or in a computer game or in a running game. And then also I mentioned there's a challenge. Players achieve goals, which is already mentioned, that it's very important that players achieve goals. And later on I will discuss a little bit about this point because it determines many outcomes in game design. So a game becomes boring without any sort of challenge, right? So the game should be hard, but not too hard. It should be easy, but not too easy. There's actually a well-defined theory that explains this. We'll discuss it soon. And then next, there are rules, as I've already mentioned. The rules of a game define the game. They define the structure and what is allowed and what is not allowed, and its artificial constructs, so within the game. They define the sequence of play, they define the winning state, they define what is fair and what is unfair for you to do within the context of that game. The next thing the next term in the definition is interactivity. Players interact with one another with the game or the game environment. Interactivity is probably one of the largest components of game, because games interact with, they call them socially aware. They interact with where you are, right, physically where you are, or they interact with who is your friend on Facebook. Interactivity is part of in our days, interactivity is part of the very important components of games. And then also there's feedback. Feedback is also probably one of the most important components of games. It also allows us, health professionals, to add something in the game that will advance health. Feedback component. Next, there's a quantifiable outcome. So you always know when you've won. There's usually no doubt if you won or not. You just know because of your score or because of the outcome. It's either you die or you have another life or things like that. Or you can catch anything on Pokemon Go. And there's also that emotional reaction. Either you lose or you win. It has to attach some emotion to it. They call it from the thrill of victory. That feeling, yes. That feeling you cannot equate it with anything else. If you say yes, I got it, or that agony of defeat. Oh no, you feel like throwing your phone down or throwing your screen out of the window. It's something you feel inside. So that emotional reaction that games generate is very important. So at times it can be frustrating, sometimes it can incite anger or some sadness, but the stronger the feeling, the more engaging a game is. Right. So we've defined all these terms one by one, and all together, these terms come together in this way. So a player gets caught up in playing a game because of the instant feedback and constant interaction are related to the challenge of the game, which is defined by rules, which all work within the system to provoke an emotional reaction, and finally results in a quantifiable outcome within an abstract version of a larger system. So this is how all these terms come together to produce a gaming experience.